Right, I think we're ready to go here, and we're all set. So a big thank you to everybody for joining us. So we're doing this in a what's the term? Hybrid format. It's a format we all love. Don't we all love that phrase? Hybrid. We got for the people that are paying attention here or tuning in on Zoom. I think we've got maybe a ballpark in this 16, 18 people with us here inside the Royal, and then countless people joining us on Zoom. So I want to thank you for joining us. It's the 2022 Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize ceremony, and you know, we're thrilled to have you with us here, whether you're joining us virtually or here in person. You know, before we get started though, I do want to acknowledge that today's event is taking place on the unceded and unsurrendered surrendered territory of the Algonquin people, and this is the Anishinaabe area. And Algonquin people, they're the original inhabitants of this area, kind of in and around the Ottawa River. And so in Algonquin culture, it's appropriate for guests to acknowledge the hospitality of their hosts when entering their territory. So that's what we're doing. With that in mind, we respectfully thank the Algonquin people for hosting us here on their ancestral lands. We want to just take a moment to think about that. And for those of you who don't know who I am, if I haven't done an event with you in person or virtually, my name is Ian Mendes. Long time is my way of saying, man, I'm old. I've covered the Ottawa Senators for 21 years, I think it is 21 years. So yeah, I'm old, okay? But I love doing this. In fact, I thought it was really interesting. I thought my worlds kind of perfectly collided. About 2 hours ago, I'm sitting in a press conference at Canadian Tire Center, and the Ottawa Senators, they had a really great weekend. They won a couple of games. There's a great kind of vibe and energy around the team. And DJ Smith is the head coach of the team, and he got asked a question about Nikita Zaitsev, who's a defenseman who's kind of been a much maligned, kind of heavily criticized defenseman. And DJ took a moment to talk about the importance of mental health. And he spent about 90 seconds of his press conference today was all about mental health and why you need to support your players, and why you need to, as organizations, you need to look at ways to support your employees. I just thought, wow, what a perfect marriage of what I'm doing today, because I'm covering the Senators and I'm about to get in my car and drive down here to the Royal. So I just thought that was great. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this award, the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation of Canada and the University of Ottawa Institute of Mental Health Research at the Royal, they jointly sponsor this prize. And it's awarded annually to an outstanding rising star researcher in the field of mental health, to recognize, encourage, and support them as they pursue you know, their research interests, their goals, and things that they want to accomplish. So we're going to hear from our 2022 winner. That's the reason why we're all gathered here again, either in person or on Zoom. And we're going to also hear from Dr. Florence Drzezinski, Dr. Chris Carruthers. We're going to have a panel discussion up here with our winner and one of her research partners as well. And because this is a hybrid event, we are going to have the opportunity for people who are watching us on Zoom to submit questions. And if you'd like to do that, you can do it through the chat box. We'll get to that at the very end. If there are technical issues during this session, and obviously not for any of you that are in the room with me here, but for anybody outside, you're going to see a couple of emails, I think, on your screen here, virtual@theroyal.ca, or Lanny's emails there, lanny.jeanette@theroyal.ca. If you have any issues there, they can hopefully troubleshoot them for you. But again, I think we're all, I can't believe it's late 2022 and I'm still getting Zoom tutorials. I think it's like, hey guy, I think we all know how it works. So I get it. Look, without further ado, we want to kind of get this program rolling along here. And my pleasure here to bring up the two aforementioned sponsors, as I mentioned, and they're standing right here. So I'd like to hand over the podium here to Dr. Florence Drzezinski, President of the University of Ottawa Institute of Mental Health Research at the Royal, and Dr. Chris Carruthers, who's the chair of the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation Board. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian, and good afternoon, bonjour, à toutes et à tous. Welcome to the 22 Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize ceremony. What an event. We're really looking forward to this event with you. And so, as Ian said, I am Florence Drzezinski. I'm the president of the Institute of Mental Health Research at the Royal, vice president research of the Royal. It is my great pleasure to be here today with Dr. Carruthers. He is, as you know, the chair of the board of directors of the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation. Thank you all for being here. I just want to outline a few people here in the room with us. Some of our researchers, some of our board members with the foundation, with the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation, with the Board of Trustees. And I know the chair of my board is sending his best wishes to you, Dr. Madigan. So without further ado, Dr. Chambers.
Thank you. Hello, hello everyone. As Florence mentioned, I'm Dr. Chris Carruthers, and I'm chair of the board, excuse me, of the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation. I'm so pleased here to be representing the foundation. It was originally established by Václav Mark and Dr. Hanny Gaensslen. You can see more of the history of these very generous folks on our website, but Dr. Mark originally came from Czechoslovakia and Dr. Gaensslen from Switzerland and set up the foundation in 2001. Since then, the foundation's mission, as established by the original founders, has been in the area of cardiology, oncology, and psychiatry. And since 2001, we have distributed over $9.5 million in grants. Supporting mental health research has become the focus more recently of the foundation. Prime reason why we are focusing on mental health is that this is an area that is underfunded in research. Compared to the other areas, mental health gets very small percentage of funding, and we want to do our small bit to improve that. It is also important to recognize excellent researchers in Canada in mental health, and that is what we're here today to do. The prize was jointly created in 2015 by the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation and the University of Ottawa Institute of Mental Health Research at the Royal. This year's winner is the 8th recipient. We also thank the Royal for their partnership in this prize.
Thank you very much, Chris, for sharing the history of the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation. I want to certainly thank the foundation for their support over the years. No doubt it's been a productive partnership. So at the Royal and at the MHR, as you know, we strive to provide access, open new possibilities for people who live with mental health and substance use health needs. And so research has to be part of the journey. We don't have a solution going forward without our research enterprise. And our IMHR mission is really to provide access to state-of-the-art care through cutting-edge research by bringing our technologies, our new research approaches to the point of care. So that's what the Institute has been busy doing over the years. Certainly, our partners are critically important in this endeavor. There are so many things we really don't know and so many things that we really could do better. And so the Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize really aims at further enabling this possibility to scope with the art of these possibilities. The pandemic really has taught us that research will continue to change the world. We are actually really honored today to be able to offer the Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize for mental health research and each year. As you know, annually, we, in partnership with the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation, are able to deliver a $100,000 prize for recognizing and encouraging researchers who have excellence in clinical research, innovation, collaboration, and creativity.
Thank you very much. This year's prize winner is Dr. Sheri Madigan from the University of Calgary and the Alberta Children's Hospital. Working with a variety of interdisciplinary teams and partnerships, her research focuses several efforts on examining the social factors that shape children's mental health. We will now play a short video to showcase her work.
I'm Dr. Sheri Madigan. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Calgary, and my research focuses on children's mental health. I was delighted to be this year's recipient of the Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize for mental health research. I've always wanted to make an impact in the lives of children and their families, and when I started my undergraduate degree, I got exposed to the role that families play in shaping children's mental health trajectories. We know that the experiences that children have in their youth can really impact and dictate how they do over the long term of their lifespan. When I came to the University of Calgary in 2015, I was really fortunate to be invited in to work with the All Our Families team and to help with their study of children and families in Alberta.
The All Our Families cohort is a longitudinal pregnancy cohort that was established in 2008 to understand the intersection between caregivers' lived experience and social environment, their intersection with their own biology, and outcomes in terms of child development and caregiver well-being. So one of the real gifts that the All Our Families cohort provides myself and other researchers with is this ability to untangle right here and now what are the biggest challenges we're facing in contemporary society. And I think it's not a mystery to most people that something that we've seen that's very different from 20 or 30 years ago are challenges with mental health.
One of the primary ways that we study children's mental health is actually going all the way back to when moms are pregnant and asking them to participate in research studies and asking them to stay part of our research study over the course of the child's entire development up until the age of 18.
Dr. Madigan, as a psychologist with a specialty and special interest in child and youth development, is a wonderful complement to the All Our Families team.
We use a research method called meta-analyses, and what meta-analyses are is a way of pooling together all the research that's been done on a particular topic and trying to come up with more of an estimate of what that whole body says about a particular association. So for example, if we're interested in the prevalence of children's mental health, so how often are children experiencing anxiety, for example, rather than just look at one study at one point in time, we take all the studies that have been done on that topic over the last 10 years, and we are able to say, based on the last 10 years of research and over 30 studies, what we find is that approximately 1 in 4 children are struggling with anxiety. One of the things I love about being a researcher is that I get to collaborate with wonderful clinicians and other researchers here at the University of Calgary and across Canada. And I think when we work collectively together, we make a greater impact in understanding and treating children's mental health. The Luna Centre approached me in my role as a researcher, but also as an experienced clinician working with children with child maltreatment.
The Luna Centre serves children and youth who've experienced child maltreatment and their families. So the child abuse service, specifically where I work, provides assessment and treatment intervention for trauma that's caused by child maltreatment. Like many trauma support services, we are having fairly high dropout rates from treatment. A lot of the kids and families weren't able to complete the treatment.
40% of the children that they were seeing for therapy due to child abuse or child maltreatment were not completing a full course of treatment. So what we often call prematurely dropping out of treatment. They really wanted to understand why this might be the case and what they could do as an organization to try to mitigate that.
The research that we did with Dr. Madigan immediately translated into change in the way that we're serving the kids and families that we see. We have seen a decrease in our child dropout, so they're completing treatment, and I'd say overall much higher morale and inspiration amongst our staff.
My hope is that this prize shines a light on children's mental health and the importance of involving the entire family when we're thinking about children's health and well-being. And I also hope that it builds greater capacity in my lab and helps me attract the next generation of research scholars. And together, hopefully collectively, we can really make a difference in the lives of youth.
Dr. Madigan. No doubt, we're living in crucial time. Really, child and youth mental health must be addressed for our children, our youth, and our society. You've seen it from Dr. Madigan herself. Her research really has the potential to transform the way child and youth mental health care is implemented. What the video doesn't tell you, and I think Dr. Madigan is really humble, I'm going to give you a little bit of her report because we need to share. She's the holder of Canada Research Chair in the determinants of child development. She was also recently inducted in the Royal Society College of New Scholar and was awarded the she was awarded 2 CHR Brand Star Awards and the World Association for Infant Mental Health New Investigation. Congratulations again. And I have to say, we are actually really honored to invest in your research, and we really look forward to furthering our understanding how our environment shapes our children's.
Just like to add a few words, and Dr. Madigan's research exemplifies the mission of the Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Foundation and the prize, particularly. This is the type of research that will change the way we think about mental health, especially in children and youth. Mach-Gaensslen Foundation of Canada is once again pleased to fund this innovative mental health research and researcher, which may not be funded by other granting agencies. So I guess we get the prize now.
That's right. We're now thrilled to welcome the winner of the 2022 Royal-Mach-Gaensslen Prize to the scene, Dr. Sheri Madigan.
Anyway, Sheri,
Thank you.
congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've moved to the interview portion. And like to introduce as well, Dr. Nicole Racine, who's going to be joining us, and Dr. Racine, clinical psychologist and assistant professor at in the School of Psychology at the University of Ottawa. And the two of you have collaborated in the past. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those collaborative efforts. What the curiosity always gets to me, I just have a couple of, like, we'll call these icebreaker questions, okay? First of all, I'm watching the video and I'm thinking, as I see, there's a Dr. Tough, and I'm thinking that's an intimidating name for somebody who works with pediatricians, though. But what's it like working with the team that you work with in Calgary?
Yeah, well, we're so lucky because we have a wonderfully collaborative team. Dr. Tough has served as a mentor to both Nicole and I, and they've welcomed us in. And I think one of she recognizes that we all bring unique strengths, and that the cohort and the families that are within it are better served by pooling our collective resources and leveraging our strengths. So she has a tough last name, but she's not a tough cookie. She's an incredibly generous mentor who's really shaped our trajectories as scholars.
Yeah. So we got to keep kind of handing the microphone. This is not like being on the Tonight Show or something.
Yeah.
We got to share the microphone. The other thing, I'm always curious. I love being at award ceremonies, and I think this is probably like the journalist in me. I got to know. So when you fly, first of all, you're not checking this, right? You're putting this in carry-on, like you're not letting this sleep, okay? But where is this going? Like in your house, where's this going to be kind of on display? Like, have you thought about that? And because I'm sure that you could just see when you're up there accepting the award, and even in that video, this one means a lot to you. Where's this going to end up being in your place?
So to be totally honest, well, everyone just saw a big part of my life, the research world of my life. The other part of my life is a mom of 4 young kids. So this is not going into our house because there's a large risk that it could be broken glass. So for those of you who can't see, so I will proudly display it in my office, and where I meet with my students, trainees, and collaborators, so they can also see it as well. And it is a true honor, and I'm really honored to be the recipient this year.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a busy home for you. That's for sure. So let me ask you this question, Nicole, because the two of you have had a chance to collaborate over the years on some projects, and let's maybe talk a little bit about those collaborative efforts and what the two of you have been able to work on over the years.
So I think one of the things you probably noticed from the video, there's a lot of students, and one of Sheri's amazing strengths is what a wonderful mentor she is. And I had the chance to meet Sheri and to work with her as a postdoctoral research fellow. And actually, the first time I asked her if she would supervise me, she had just landed in Calgary and she thought, I can't take this on right now. And I was extremely grateful she changed her mind a couple of weeks later, because it sent my career and trajectory certainly on a different course. And so one of the very best parts about working with Sheri, she's a yes person. So if you ask her, you think, oh, I have this idea. I think, there's this group of people who, they want to collaborate with us. She said, great, how do we do it? And that certainly has always been my experience working with her. And she's a wonderful mentor. Trainees absolutely adore working with her. And I'm so grateful that I've had that opportunity.
And maybe I'll just kind of follow up on that. And it seems like, and for the people that are watching on Zoom and certainly in this room, it feels like there's a great rapport that the two of you have. You can just sense it. How important is it to have, when you're in a professional relationship working on things of this nature, to have that sort of personal connection with the people you're collaborating with? Does that help your work along?
Yeah, definitely. We study relationships, and we study how relationships matter for kids. And so we carry that work into our own personal relationships. So I often say that I like research, the study of relationships and research, but I like the relationships that are formed out of creativity and the research process. And we talk a lot about kindness quotient and making sure that everybody is actually caring and supportive of one another. So we try to practice what we study, basically. We study social support, and we are the social support system for one another. And I think that makes for better science, to be honest, because we really care not just about what we're studying, but how we're going about it and modeling that social support as a variable that we look at in our data. And so we try to be the protective factors for one another.
And as you talk about relationships that you study, you both decided to kind of focus on youth mental health as kind of the area you were going to focus on. Like what? And maybe I'll ask each of you. I'm going to only ask the question one time, and then you can hand the mic over. But I'll ask the question of like what drew you into this? I think we all have things that maybe we all want to pursue in life. Like, what was the moment that you felt like? Was it like a calling that you felt like you wanted to do this? Was it just a fascination with the topic? Was it just one of those things? There was a market inefficiency in this that really, hey, we need to put more resources into this. Like, there's not enough people studying. Like, what was the thing that the catalyst that drew you into this field?
I think for me, one of the things that really motivated me to do research in children's mental health and to become a psychologist and a clinician is knowing the immense impact, especially in the early years, that help and interventions and supports can have. And so whether that was through, observations in my, own youth and childhood, but certainly as I began to learn more about psychology and about children's mental health, you realize that there's a window of opportunity and it's early. And we know that from return on investment studies, we know that from the research now. And so I thought, you know what, if you're going to invest a portion of your life doing something and really dedicate yourself, should be where it counts.
Yeah, I think we have the same reasons. And to be honest, you'll see we're very aligned. I come from a family who, educators and police officers, and who the focus was always caring for the welfare of children and families. And so this felt like another avenue of providing some caregiving. And what I like about being a clinician is you can be a difference maker and in the lives of a child or in a family. And so I think a lot of the questions that we ask as researchers are actually born out of our clinical work and born out of ideas that we think, well, I wonder why this is happening. And then we feel really privileged to actually go and study like, why might that be happening at a population level? So we take some of the clinical questions that we have and we look at it at a population level to try to actually keep the wheels in motion and to actually gather that research and that knowledge to then apply it to children's mental health and ultimately improve some of the outcomes for kids.
You know, I think it's interesting and you kind of saw that in the video and you just followed up on it there when you said, look, you came from educators, police officers. Can you maybe expand on that importance of the upbringing? I think to paraphrase from the video, it was basically like the years that you have as a child are just, you carry those with you forever, right? And so I know that you've done research on, you know, intergenerational trauma and things of that nature, and just maybe to put it in a layperson's terms for us, like the importance of those years. And is there a particular age range within the youth, you know, obviously we'll go, let's say 0 to 18, but within 0 to 18, is there like a specific window, you know, we should be more attuned to how children are feeling and kind of the state of their mental health?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we often say the first 2,000 days of life are some of the more seminal days and years of children's life. The brain's rapidly developing. Children are really responsive to environmental stimulation. It's where they're learning all these developmental skills. So we know that first 2,000 days is really critical, but there are windows of opportunity throughout the entire lifespan. So what happens in those first 2,000 days doesn't have to be deterministic of life outcomes. It can really set kids up for success. And what we really try to look at and study is what are some of the factors that when in place, help children succeed developmentally or from a mental health standpoint, and what factors may sort of interrupt some of that development or some of that mental health, what we'd like to see as an optimal mental health trajectory. So that's sort of, we're interested in both pathways because they inform how we should then approach prevention and intervention approaches following that. But I'll let Nicole.
Yeah. Oh, pass it back. See, I was going to try to do the math, divide 2,000 days by 360. No, but what I think is interesting too, and I'm sure both of you will have something to say on this. And I know a lot of people are exhausted speaking about COVID-19 and the pandemic. But I think if there's one, and I don't want to use the term benefit because that's not the right what I'm trying to get at, but I think what the pandemic has done is it's really shined the light on youth mental health. I think all of us, and I have teenage daughters, and anybody who's watching this that has kids kind of whatever that age is, you've probably experienced your child going through something different. And whether it was online schooling, being isolated, inability to work out, like we kind of took away all of every outlet for kids. We took it away for, you know, X amount of months, depending on where you lived. But it feels like there's been a profound impact. And I'm wondering from where you sit in your chairs, how are we going to use this 2 years? How are we going to use what we learned here and take it forward?
Yeah, I think that it's such an important question. And I think that, like you said, you know, the flashlight that got shone on children's mental health and how important it is for us to attend to it. And certainly our hope from the work that we've done, whether it's meta-analytic work or cohort studies where we followed the same children from before the pandemic to after to really demonstrate the impacts of the pandemic on kids' mental health. I think we're hopeful that, well, we know actually that a lot of that information got translated into policy documents or was used to really advocate strongly for increased funding and increased support for children's mental health. And there's also been shifts and pivots in how we deliver care and doing that in a virtual manner and in a way that's more accessible for families. And so I certainly think, you know, we hope that all of those changes are things that will make things better.
That's it. Wow.
I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that Nicole really highlighted that. And I think what we look for moving forward together and with many of our collaborators across Canada is trying to find innovative ways to fill the gap, because many kids are not actually getting treatment services, but they're struggling. And so I think our passion for their mental health and sort of the well-being of families and youth across the country is really to try to give them some strategies, some resources, because we know kids are really suffering right now. And I think if there are kids out there, families out there saying, you know, what are people doing? What we're really trying to do is fill that gap that they, for services that they desperately want.
And I want to remind people, we will take some questions for the people in the audience here. If you have any questions, we'll get to those in a second as well. If you're watching on Zoom, fire your questions into the little, there's a little chat box. We'll try to get to some of those as well. I think, Nicole, you mentioned that, people are willing to pivot to kind of online or Zoom kind of sessions. Can you maybe give our audience today a sense of where, like, what resources have been, like, let's go back even 5 years or 10 years, like how has the landscape changed in terms of resources that are available to families and kids that might be dealing with mental health issues on kind of the youth side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will say that I think, there's innovation and people trying to shift the way care is delivered. But I will note that before the pandemic, we had a youth mental health crisis. We had underfunded youth mental health care. And that is ongoing. We still have that crisis, and now it's been made worse by increase in prevalences in mental health issues. We know kids wait a long time to receive therapy and to receive support, so do their families, and those issues are ongoing. And so I think as there continue to be, more programs that are developed, or even, in our own work that we're doing, trying to develop resources for families, that gap Sheri's talking about, it still exists, and it needs to be closed, not only with innovation and research, but also increases in support and funding.
So it's, in some ways, as you said, it's unfortunate that we've seen this increase in mental health, but it's actually pushed, I think, some researchers a little bit beyond our comfort zone. So we're not just doing the research, but we're trying to think outside the box. And so one of the things that we've thought about, because there's the wait list for trauma treatment, as you heard a little bit about, is about 4 to 8 months. And so that means someone who's gone through a really difficult traumatic experience might be sitting on a wait list waiting for treatment services while they have acute symptoms. So what we've tried to do is build a platform where they could go gain knowledge about trauma, gain understanding, gain some initial symptom management, so that while they're waiting on the wait list, they've got a little bit of information and can feel like there's a place there to learn about what's going on with them and to find ways of supporting themselves. And that way, we hope that we reduce the overall symptom distress while people wait for treatment, which they will get. But while you're waiting, it's really nice and very empowering to have information to understand what's going on, because those symptoms are hard to manage: nightmares, flashbacks, kids in real distress. So we've developed a platform where caregivers can, not just caregivers, but the youth themselves, and it can go. And we did this project with youth, with caregivers, with clinicians. They're informing us about what should be on these platforms, what information is there. So it's been a real collective effort.
Yeah, and I think that it's great when you say that it's not only for the youth, but obviously the caregivers as well, because I think if depending on your age, when you're paying attention, there's a very good chance, like, for my generation, I was a kid who grew up like kind of late 80s, early 90s, and there was no such thing as mental health for youth. And we probably all had some degree of anxiety and stress, but we weren't allowed to express it, right? It was just kind of like, hey, it's in your head, or suck it up. Things of that nature was kind of the messaging that we would get back. So much of this feels like it needs to be rooted in education, right? Like, we just need to educate parents. So do you feel, though, like with the work that you're doing, that we are educating parents, that parents in 2022 are so much more understanding of youth mental health than maybe in 2002 or 1992 or however far back you want to draw the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think through a number of different campaigns as well, the Canadian Mental Health Association and things like a number of campaigns, I think, have brought mental health to light. And I think people are more educated about mental health. We talk to youth all the time. We have an advisory committee that has youth on it, and they are well versed. They know what we're talking about, and they also know what's helpful to them. And so one of the best things has actually been being able to hear their voices and include that as part of the work that we do and the work that we develop.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you when we watch that video, and I want to make sure I get the name right here. Yeah, the Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Center that we saw in the video there. And it just looks like a wonderful place that I'm sure I just want to give you a platform to talk a little bit about it, because you could see a little bit in the video of what that center meant, but maybe you can just give our audience here an idea of exactly what's kind of the heartbeat of that center.
For sure, I'd be so glad to. So this is work that Nicole and I have embarked on together with the Luna Center, and child advocacy centers are across Canada. And what was happening with kids who experienced child maltreatment is they were having to tell their story again and again and again, which can be really re-traumatizing for them. So they'd have to go to the police, then they'd have to go to the hospital to see a doctor, then they'd have to go to maybe the children's aid to tell a social worker what happened to them. And what the advocacy centers do is they have everyone there. Police are there, social work's there, doctors, nurses, psychologists are there, and children are brought there. And so the children don't have to go around everywhere. They can actually go to one place, and all the people they need to get to tell their story to, and to actually get on a road to recovery are in one spot for them. So that's what the Luna Child Advocacy Center is. And we work with the child abuse service team there. So they're the ones who do the assessments and the treatments of kids who have endured maltreatment and are struggling with a lot of distress. And Nicole and I both, as clinicians, are trauma therapists. So it's been a really lovely collaboration with them. And I think one of the most rewarding things that's happened is, as a researcher, you think, well, this would be a really good research question. I wonder what the answer to that is. And then we would meet with the clinicians and they would say what their research questions were. And they were different than ours. And they were better than ours, to be honest. And so we thought, well, we learned so much from them. And instead of going in and dictating what we thought the research questions we sat back and we listened to what their questions are, which is born out of their clinical work, but also their patients and what they think and what they're wondering about. So we then went through a process of co-creating our research questions. And to us, their pressing question was, why are so many of the kids dropping out of treatment? When they drop out of treatment, we know they're at greater risk of developing mental illness later in their life. So we really want them to finish the course of treatment. And that was a big question for them. I forget what our question was. We sort of threw it out the door quite quickly, to be honest, because their questions were so good. But then we engaged in a co-creation process of the research questions and the research project. And I can speak for Nicole and I in saying it's been one of the more rewarding components of our, I think, careers to date, is to be able to collaborate with them. And there can be an 18-year gap between when you do research and when it gets translated into practice. And we think that's too long. And one of the things we've noticed with working with community partnerships is as soon as we finished the research question and the research project, we went back to the team and we said, this is a little bit why we think so many people are dropping out of treatment. And they said, well, what do you think? What can we make now to make sure that treatment dropout is less and less and less over time? And we made some suggestions, which they implemented right away. And they've actually seen a reduction in their treatment dropout. So I think that's sort of the, we say like sparks fly when sort of at the interface of research and practice. And I think that's a really good example of that.
And just a quick follow-up on the Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Center. Does every major city in Canada have a place like that? Like, is that kind of fair to say? Like every city has one?
So I think now there are more than 30 in Canada that have been developed, and they have to come together as a partnership, right? So all the partners that Sheri talked about have to come together, and there's an application process they put forward, and then it actually gets built, but usually requires also, funding and donations and things like that. So many major centers do have them, and the Luna Child Advocacy Center is in Calgary, and they see the most severe forms of maltreatment in Southern Alberta. Yeah. And
just the goal of them, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but was to put the child first.
Yeah.
So rather than, it's very child focused. So what can we do to make a child who's endured a really difficult traumatic event, what can we do to ease the process or ease the burden that can come with having to tell your story over and over again?
I mean, you saw in the video, there's it looks like a campsite.
No, yeah.
You know, it's set up like there's a mini pretend campfire and some tents and you know, lots of toys and engaging things, right? To make it so that kids are going there for an unpleasant reason, right? But to make it so that at least the families feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. If you create a kind of cold, sterile environment, it doesn't serve as a great backdrop or a catalyst to share that information. Okay, we're gonna maybe hand over some. I'll tell you what. Well, I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we will open it up here. And then I'm gonna feel like how you felt. Where remember you were just saying that they had better questions than you did. That's gonna be me in about 2 minutes here when I hand it over to the audience. And again, if you're on Zoom, fire those questions into the chat box and then actually I don't even know how, actually maybe I should have figured this out. Maybe I get Michaela up there. You can text me any questions. There we go. You text me some questions if they're in the chat box and I'll ask them here. I'm always curious about this. You mentioned you have 4 kids. Do you mind sharing the age range of those kids?
Sure. I'm sure they'd love if I talked about them.
Yeah. Are they watching now?
They're all at school, hopefully. I have a 13-year-old, soon to be 14, an 11-year-old son, and I have 5-year-old twins. So Gabby and Alex, Georgia and Oliver. And
the reason why I ask is, like, how difficult is you? Is it for you? I'm always fascinated because when you work in this field, how hard is it to like almost take off your medical hat and just put on a mom hat? Are you able to, like, and how do you separate those two things?
Yeah, it's something we actually talk about. Nicole and I went on a long walk and talk along the canal yesterday, and this is actually conversation came up about how our work and our lives actually intersect around what we know and how good and maybe sometimes difficult it is to actually just parent. Parenting is a rewarding life experience, but it's also a difficult one. And we try and do it to the best of our abilities. And I think we feel really informed from the work that we do. And as clinicians, that can be really helpful. But sometimes when it's your own kids, you can't always, you act as a parent first and as a clinician second. And so I think it's been helpful and helpful in kind of, figuring out what I can do to optimize their life. But I think individuals are born, they come out with their own personalities, and I have done my, very best, but I've also honored the individual differences that each of my children have. And I think sort of one of my, superpower strengths is not my own, but having my spouse there who also really helps me, not only, but with my, lets me do my career, but also co-parents in a way with me that together we say, well, our motto is together we're better. And I think our kids are better because we really invest, as a duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a parent, and I know we talk a lot about the fact that parenting is humbling. It's a real humbling experience and job. And I'm, grateful for that opportunity because I think both as a clinician and researcher makes you reflect about, oftentimes families are in really difficult situations that no one truly wanted to be in the first place. And kids don't come with a manual, far from it. They come with nothing. They show up in the world and you're supposed to figure out what to do. And I think we really view an important part of our work is providing supports in many instances where supports weren't provided to parents. And I think being a parent also helps us to cultivate empathy in scenarios where really things can be quite challenging.
Yeah, excellent. Such insightful answers, because I'm just so curious how that works, because it's somewhat like a separation of church and state. Like it's where I'm always fascinated how you are able to separate the two, because you would go into situations, with your own children with so much knowledge from your field that you would have a completely different approach than somebody like me who doesn't have that sort of clinical background in dealing with these things with your kids. So I appreciate both of you sharing that. that insight. And it's so true, right? Like kids can simultaneously, they can kind of tear you down and make you feel like you're 1 inch tall, and then make you feel like you're 20 feet tall, the next day. And it's the most wonderful thing in the world, and you can experience all those emotions through your children. All right, so I promised question time, and like I said, we've got about 18-ish, 20 people here. Don't be shy. There's a reason why you came to this auditorium, right? There's a reason why you came here. It's so you could participate in this. So if we've got, look at this, we've got a question. I may have to, depending on the volume here, I may have to repeat it for the people on Zoom, but go ahead.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Ms. Dacian. Fascinating. And you touched on it, things that maybe get a better sense, I guess, from the family perspective, right? Through treatment, children sometimes stop treatment, and for all kinds of reasons. You touched on that. Maybe to expand a little bit on how to get engaged. And I guess the other part of my question is, how do you engage the families? Because sometimes they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, so maybe just to repeat the question for the people who may not have heard it, just about kind of engaging families here, right? How do you engage families that have been through difficult, traumatic experiences?
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is one of the things that the Luna Center does best, and one of the things that they really, pride themselves in doing is that this idea that you have to consider not only the child, but also, their environment and their caregivers and where they're at and what supports they might need. So they've actually recently brought on a staff member who actually works directly with the parents related to their own mental health if they're having challenges. Because we know some of the barriers to kids attending treatment is actually if their caregiver themselves isn't doing well, then that's going to have an impact on their ability to attend. So they really, I think, always had an important emphasis on caregivers and parents, but really shifted, I think, to providing services more directly to them. And then another thing they do is many of the interventions are actually parent focused. So in the younger kids, there are attachment-based interventions that are about forming a strong relationship and bond with their kids. And then as the kids get older, there's a program called Connect that's actually about how to connect with your teen and have a strong relationship with them, and then support them in their own journey. And so absolutely, I think you have to support, there's the kids, and then you have to support the adults in their world that are there with them all the time.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great answer. A few other practical things is they have therapy dogs, which actually really helps too. Axel and the amazing therapy dogs that actually are 24/7 involved with the Luna Center. And so that puts kids at ease, engages the families, allows caregivers to maybe focus on what they need to do in terms of supporting the child, because the child is actually feeling a little bit supported by therapy dogs. What we found in our work with them is that children who had more protective factors in their life, or who could identify either at an individual level, like they had good coping strategies, at a family level, like they had supportive caregivers, at a education level, so they had a teacher that really cared about them, or a neighborhood level, so someone, they were connected spiritually to something, or they had a community agency that was really advocating for them or supporting them. If they had supportive, protective factors at any one of those levels, they were more likely to stay in treatment. So unfortunately, some kids who have experienced maltreatment experience it in the context of the relationship with the caregiver. So that can be really difficult. But if they have those protective strengths, either at school, in their neighborhood, from another caregiver who really, is supporting them, that's actually going to help them stay in treatment. So that was one of the findings that we found. And what the Luna Child Advocacy Center did in recognizing that is at intake. So they walk in the door, one of the first things they ask about the kids is, tell me who's there for you. What's working for you? What do you feel connected to? And they've put that at the forefront of the discussions with kids, because they know that if kids have greater awareness and greater connection to those things, they're actually more likely to benefit from treatment and finish treatment.
Excellent. Share this with educators.
Excellent. If we have any other, I got a whole bunch of questions from Zoom, but if anyone has questions, by all means, you jump up and, yeah, there we go. I think we got another question in the audience here.
This is a microphone.
Wow. This looks like a blue box.
First, Dr. Carruthers, I want to thank the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation for continuing to support incredible mental health researchers. And to both of you, congratulations. I have a two-part question. I am also a parent of all, so I hope you're getting so much deserved rest later in the nation's capital. When I was starting my family, a clinician that I had the opportunity to work with, Dr. David Goldblum, gave me a piece of advice that at the time I thought was very simple, but I've since learned is not. He said the best thing that you can do to support your children's mental health is to have dinner as a family, which was unexpected, and as I said, is not as easy as it may seem. So my question to you is, what advice do you have to parents of young children to get them set up on a path to success? And my second question is, I love what you said about the sparks flying at the intersection of clinical parent research. So what is the burning research question that you are hoping to answer?
Okay.
So I like the advice that you were given. I'm going to add a little caveat. And I'm going to say device-free dinners. So we live in a different world now where technology is so important. So I think it's really important to have dinner together. There's actually research to show that when you have dinner together, kids do better. Now we say have a device-free dinner together because we actually need to put the devices away. So we need to disconnect to connect. And I think that that's a really, like, that's contemporary. This is contemporary life now. So I think that's great, great advice from your mentor. We study connection. So when kids feel connected, they tend to do better. And one of the sort of studies that we found in all our families over the pandemic is that kids, their prior mental health really mattered for how they did in the pandemic, but equally important was how connected they felt to their parents. So if kids felt disconnected to their parents, they weren't doing well during the pandemic. So we know that, or flip that on its head, when kids felt connected, they were doing better. So we actually know that how we form connections and bonds with our caregivers can really matter. It matters in younger years, but it also actually can carry through all through those teenage years. So I think it's important to stay connected. And I think the dinner table is a great place to do that. And for me, I think, and for both of us, our burning question is how do we make mental health, how do we create, how do we make access to mental health scalable and accessible? So we know that, as Nicole mentioned, 1/4 of youth prior to the pandemic, only one in 4 kids who are having severe mental health problems got the services they needed. Then in the pandemic, our research shows that mental illness has doubled during the pandemic, but kids are still only 1/4. That means 1/8 of kids are maybe getting the services they need now. So we want, as researchers and as clinicians, to, as I mentioned, try to think outside the box to try to make mental health accessible to kids. So that's getting it in the schools, that's making it accessible to kids who are interested in learning about it online, that's providing caregiver supports so that they can in turn support their kids. So I think for us, it's less of a burning research question and more of a social impact. How are we going to do that? Because we want to be part of the solution and getting kids, thriving and in more optimal, healthy environments.
Yeah, I think that's such a great answer. And to build on that, something else that we've implemented and included as part of the modules that we built for families at the Luna Center was an entire module on taking care of you to take care of your child. So this idea that, in addition to connection, in addition to spending time together, that caregivers also, when they can in small ways, need to be taking care of themselves and receive the support that they need. And so, I think as parents, it's always important to keep that in mind. And as Sheri said, I think, we know a lot of what needs to be done. We know a lot of what things work, and now it's about implementing that and getting that out to the children and youth in Canada so that You know, we know right now we're 31st out of 38 wealthy nations with regards to children's health and well-being around the world. We don't want to be 31st anymore, right? We're better than that. We can do better than that, and we want to contribute to that.
Well said. We have time only for one more question. It was ironic as you were talking about, you got to disconnect to connect. Meanwhile, I'm scrolling my phone, but I promise you, it's work related.
Yeah.
We are cultivating the questions that came in from Zoom. From the people. We do appreciate all the questions. We only have time for one more, but I thought it was ironic that you talked about, you know, disconnecting from social media or from your devices, because we did have a question that came in from Zoom that said, have either of the two of you studied the impact of social media maltreatment or bullying, etc., on mental health of children and youth? And I would imagine that's such a topic of discussion amongst your peers.
Yeah. So we've actually done quite a lot of research on screen time in the younger years, less so about social media. But what I can say about our work on screen time is that what we look at is how much screen time kids are getting and what that means for their developmental success and their mental health. What we've found in our work and in our work with the All Our Families team is that when kids are on screens for far too long, what they're missing out on is opportunities to learn. And this is in turn showing up in some of when we look at how, like, are they meeting their developmental milestones on time? Are they walking, talking on time? Are they, are they sort of learning how to interact with their peers in a way that's like developmentally appropriate? And what we're finding is that the kids who are on screens for too long aren't meeting those developmental milestones. So, and that's because we think that they're missing out on these opportunities. So kids learn through interaction, and it kind of gets back to this idea of connection. So when kids are in front of screens, they're not connected to anybody. They're not learning from anybody. And so it's really about trying to pull off the screens and then fill that space with learning opportunities. So every time a child interacts with someone or learns a new word, they're gaining developmental advantage. And when you learn new words, you can communicate better, and then you can communicate how you feel, and that's going to help you with your social emotional skills. So all these things are really interconnected. I will say, like, in the social media realm, one of the more interesting findings to come out more recently is that it's the kids, it's all about moderation, as we've all learned in life in different ways. And for kids in social media and mental health, what they're finding is it's the kids who actually get no screens and the kids who get tons of social media exposure that are having outcomes that are where they're struggling more. Because the reality is teenagers interact on their phones, and actually a lot of their social interactions happen through there. So we need to give them a dose of screen time or a dose of social media, not too much. It's a little bit like Goldilocks. So, you know, not too little, not too much, just the right amount. And that's actually how it applies to screen time. And I think how it applies to a lot of our behaviors in life. So it's okay to sit down and have a family movie tonight and enjoy screen time, but disconnect so that you can connect as a family, because we know that those connections are actually what help kids thrive.
Yeah, well said. And I'll just follow that up. I say I really enjoyed. I watched, I think it was on Netflix, the Social Dilemma, the documentary on just how our young youth are addicted to their phones, and it was eye-opening. And it, you know, I'm sure the research on that wouldn't have shocked either of you, but I think as a parent, it was quite alarming. And it's a great reminder about, you know, having the dinner, disconnecting, you know, those conversations matter. And I think it's so wonderful that both of you, Dr. Madigan, Dr. Racine, that you took a few minutes here to share your insights. I think our audience here, both in person and virtually, really benefited from your time here. So thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. I would clap as well, but I got the mic.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. So I'm just going to invite Dr. Jarzynski and Dr. Carruthers back to deliver their closing remarks here.
I'll be brief. You know, I really want to thank you, Dr. Madigan and Dr. Racine. We are really privileged to be able to learn from you in this regard. You're really so passionate about what you do. We have no doubt that your work will continue to change the way youth and child are cared for. So thank you for everything that you do I just wanted to say as well, you said many fantastic points. So one of the things you said is the way you conduct your research around building interpretation teams that involve clients and family. I see some of our researchers in the room. I see Dr. Kaminsky and I see Dr. Phillips, who are also applying this methodology with great success. So they are here in the room as well, and we will include them in the next session.
I will just add, I enjoyed that panel very much. And I think from the foundation's point of view, Dr. Madigan exemplifies our goal. We established this prize, what we saw, the benefit to Canadians in mental health research, and you are an excellent example. Congratulations.
Finish by saying, we all know it takes a village. And so this is now introduced to the Mach-Gaensslen Foundation that for your support and your partnership over the years. I also want to thank, of course, Dr. Madigan for coming to Ottawa from Calgary, and Dr. Racine for being here as well, sharing this time with us. I want to thank my team as well at the NHR for running a really smooth process and how they do that often, and also our communication team, all your work to make this and this competition. It is a national, very competitive competition. I want to thank as well the Blue Ribbon Adjudication Committee, without whom we couldn't select the winners from the numerous amount of outstanding applications that we received in this competition. So thank you to our education panel for lending your expertise to this outstanding program. And I want to thank you for being a wonderful and sharing your expertise with us and being such a great supporter of mental health research in Canada. And then finally, thank you to our viewers here in the room and virtually for your engagement with that. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, and then it's really not much to add, but thank you so much. And I want to thank again everybody who came here in person. We really appreciate this. For those of you who are viewing online, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate this. We hope you have a safe and wonderful holiday season, and fingers crossed we'll see you again in 2023.